Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Future of BizTech. I am your host, JC Granger, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Brian Borg, who is the founder and CEO of OnPath Testing. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what is it that OnPath does?
Thanks so much, JC. Great to be here. So on Path Testing, we, in short, help software producers, software companies, anybody producing software make a good product. So we focus on the QA side of the software development team. So we focus on the testing, the requirements, the process, basically everything that's needed to release a piece of software in exactly the way, the format that the creators envisioned.
So is that like a big giant beta test company? I mean, I guess when would people bring you in and what part of the process, right? Like what exactly, how hands-on are you guys with this?
Yeah. Well, to answer your first question, when they bring us in, it can be all over the map. So, as you probably know, when you create a piece of software, typically it starts with some sort of list of requirements. Could be on the back of a napkin, the common stereotype, or it could be a really thorough, well thought out requirements document. And of course, from there you start getting into the development, maybe the design, and at some point you're going to release it. Well, we typically come in after some amount of code is produced so that we can, that's the most common time that we're brought in. The tech leaders or the company owners realize that we need to make sure that this piece of software does what it should do, and so they give us a call. But in truth, we've been brought in the very front of the process of the software development process by very forward-thinking business leaders, tech leaders, and we've been brought in right at the very end when they've released and they're in an oh crap moment.
Uh,
Users are running into bugs, and we really need some QA done on our product.
I guess that they'll only make that mistake once, right? Hopefully, after being put in that position, they call you a little earlier.
That's
What
exactly.
kind of apps or programs and software and whatnot
Yeah.
do you find are the most in need
Mm,
of QA before? I mean, one could argue everything needs QA beforehand. I get that,
yep.
but
Yep.
like, when is it like, hey, man, this is really where you need to bring a company like this in?
We've worked in software across the spectrum of industries. So, I mean, is there one that's more maybe bug prone or error prone? Not really. Software is software, and you need developers that build software. Obviously, more and more it's being built by AI, but still, mistakes are made. Whether it's a simple syntax error, which is usually caught, but database issues, integration issues. API issues. A lot of times, so those are simply those issues with any part of the application can be inherent in any industry and any software that you produce. What we see also is more nuanced bugs, user flows, user errors, usability issues. So those require more of a human eye that's going to look at a piece of software and say, that doesn't quite make sense, and so we can do those types of testing as well.
How much do you think it saves a company, even though it costs them to hire a company like yours?
Mhm.
When you're in that prospect stage and you're talking to them, I bet you have some sort of numbers when you're like, listen, you don't have to bring in a QA, but
Yeah.
historically speaking, this is what it costs you when things, to not kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
where do you put that math? How do you tell that to a company that's considering a QA company?
Yeah, it's the ROI is undeniable. If you're able to put out a piece of software, even if it's just an internal piece of software that your internal users are going to be utilizing, like one of our products right now is for a company to manage their process, their internal process, and business workflow. And so that's only going to be used by their internal folks. And even that, the ROI is known, is established that you will have happier users. You will have a system that's more bug free. And of course, if that system is getting in front of end users that are paying your bills, that are actually your, business drivers, then those numbers are depending on the business, it could be in the millions of dollars. As people sign up for your business and then leave because your application doesn't work. So it's hard to pin down an exact number or percentage of that. Of the business model and what the impact could be. But studies have been done over and over decades. IBM did some of the early ones in the 90s and even before, of the ROI of doing proper QA before releasing. And so we don't discuss so much specific numbers. You'll save, $100,000 if you bring on QA, because it's almost impossible to gauge that.
That's very
It's
subjective.
it's very subjective, and it's very um, particular to that industry, to that software that they're building. Um, like I said, if it's an internal piece of software, maybe it doesn't impact the bottom line directly, but it's indirectly because now their internal users can get their work done X amount of times faster. You know.
Yeah. So, what percentage of your clients come to you first? As in, like, it are these clients and these companies that need the QA testing, are they typically getting ahead of the problem and saying before they even launch, hey, we got to do this? Or are most of them in the oh crap area that you talked about where they something's already failed and they got to hurry up and figure out why and they don't have the bandwidth or the staff to do it?
Most of the time, they're in the oh crap phase. Most of the time, they're several steps down that road, or just getting ready to release, and for one reason or another, maybe they planned on a QA team or process and it fell through, or they just didn't really think about it until they got to this point. But they call us in a bit of a panic and say, "Hey, we need some QA right now," and other folks, kind of like you said, if you made that mistake of waiting too long and getting into that oh crap moment, those business leaders, tech leaders, et cetera, typically on the next go around, they're very proactive about bringing in QA. We have another client,
Yeah.
in the Web3 world, in the crypto world, that they actually, I was amazed. They hired us before they hired any developers. We talked to them. They told us what they're building. It's great. They hired us. We engaged, and then we sat for 2 or 3 months because nothing was built yet. And
Yeah,
that's
you know
great
what?
because, yeah,
I bet the CEO of that company worked somewhere else
oh,
where it went wrong. There's no way. There's no way he would just had the
that's
foresight.
right.
I
That's
guarantee
exactly right.
he had the trauma. It was the trauma that he had
That's exactly
from
right.
another company.
We all learn through pain, and believe me, putting out a piece of software that doesn't do what it's expected and having a lot of angry customers is painful.
Well, you kind of remind me of like a cybersecurity industry, right? Where, yeah, you probably should call these guys before you get hacked, right? But it just ends up being this
Yeah.
reactionary service and industry. What has that been like? Because there's got to be a lot of peaks and valleys, right? Because just the
Mhm.
nature of what you help with when people are on mass, not even calling until it became a problem. You know, what kind of struggles have you guys dealt with when it comes to that kind of up and down? Or am I completely wrong here? And it's been totally steady, right? It
Yeah.
just seems like it would be kind of like out of nowhere getting an emergency call, you know?
Yeah. Well, so there's a variety of teams out there with the maturity, the development maturity and process maturity that they have or don't have. And so, some people do call us with the oh crap, we need you right away, and everything is a mess, and development is, maybe having a hard time with product or project management, and things are a bit chaotic. But really, more times than not, especially nowadays, we're in the mid 2020s, and when I started in the early 2000s, it was still kind of a new part of the team. It's like people thought that, oh, my developers can do the testing, or my product managers, or my son or daughter or niece could do
Mhm.
the testing. And so it's been a real maturing process of the industry, that, hey, this is an actual dedicated skill that you'll need on staff. And these are professionals, these are trained professionals. They think in a way that's conducive to breaking a piece of software, which requires knowledge, technical knowledge of how it was built in order to how to, we know how to break it. And then as it evolved, excuse me, as it evolved, um, then more and more people, it became just a standard that uh, QA is a part of the tech team. And so nowadays it's less and less that we get those, oh crap moments. People do bring us in at some point in that tech cycle, in the development cycle, the SDLC. And so that's more often where we find ourselves. We're coming in at some point where either they have no QA and they need some people on that, or they have some QA but they need some different kind of quality assurance. Some automation testing, for example. That's a very common scenario. So we'll come in. There's some process established. There's some team established. The development is underway, and we will just blend in with their existing team and process and tools, and basically fill in that gap. So you need manual testing, you need automation testing, performance, security, etc. We will make sure that your product is covered from all bases that you seem important, that you deem important, and of course, we'll give our professional
Sure.
ideas on that too.
Okay. And then I guess what made you want to start the company? Like, were you
Yeah,
at corporate and then you were like, "Oh, this is all crap. I could do it better." I mean, like,
yeah.
or what's your villain origin story, Brian?
Yeah, right. So yeah, I got involved in as a developer in the late 90s. So in the booming .com era,
Yep.
and the first company I worked with, they fired all the developers. We just want to, you're not doing your job, or they were upset in some way. Fired all the developers, the whole dev team. It was kind of dramatic. And I was just a brand new developer, in Cold Fusion and JavaScript and HTML. And the QA manager at that company said, I've already had a relationship with this person, and a good relationship, and so they said, why don't you come work in QA? And that was pretty much it. And when I got into QA, back then, it was very manual based. There was some starting of automation, but it was still very manual, looking into databases on the back end. But the particular skill set of a QA engineer is quite unique, because you need that technical background in order, again, to understand how something is built. You can break it better. You can know where the weak points are, but there's also a very human component. There's a process oriented component. What is the best way that we can build this software through the sprint cycle, or development life cycle? What checkpoints do we need in place? What tools do we need in place? We need to talk to design and product and project. So we need to talk to all these people and get them on board. And so QA quality really encompasses the entire development team, the entire development spectrum. And some people take it even further. It envelops the entire company, just having a quality mindset. And that was really a progressive idea back then, but now you see it's just standard in many companies. It's all of our jobs to make sure that this product is the best.
So, how competitive is your industry? I guess, like, what makes it hard to scale
Yeah.
in the QA industry?
Yeah, so when we started in 2009, and I went from the early days of being an employee to being a contractor, and then starting this in 2009. So as part of that origin, at that point in time, there weren't a whole lot competition. There weren't a whole lot of QA shops, that were just focusing on QA. Usually they did dev, and QA was kind of a side arm of their effort. Um, so and nowadays it's much more deep, that field of folks doing QA, of teams doing QA. Um, and specifically to scale, um, it's what I've seen. It's scaling in terms of your services offered naturally. So how broad of the QA spectrum are you filling? And I've seen other teams scale as far as starting to offer development services or other, managed services. So that is a way that they've scaled. And then, of course, you know, as far as just scaling the business in terms of clientele and revenue, then it's just a matter of your, marketing and sales and finding those good people to do the operation side.
Well, that does actually bring me to my next question because you mentioned marketing. I'm a marketing guy by trade, so I always like to
Yeah.
ask what companies are doing
Yeah.
to, get the word out there. As I always say on every podcast, PR, check. You're on a podcast. Great. So
Yeah.
we know you're doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
What else is OnPath doing to even just let companies know that you even exist? Like, period. Like, how do they even know to contact you if they either have the problem or they want to get ahead of it?
Right. So it's for us it's pretty the pretty standard outreach as far as in person. Right now there's the Boulder Startup Week in our region, Boulder, Colorado. And so it's getting out there, it's talking to people, obviously the website, the podcasts, the actual content that we're producing. We do try to stay on top of the latest trends. So, AI, and now it's agentic AI. So all of these things are keeping us hopefully top of mind with in
Mhm.
the industry. And yeah, so and then of course, being in the service industry, the networking. So keeping track of, who we've worked with, trying to engage with them and over time. All of that is super helpful as far as maintaining and growing our business.
Do you? So people don't know this, but I'm in the Boulder area too, right? So
Yeah.
you happen to be a neighbor, so to speak, right?
Yep.
You're down the road, so to speak, from me. I'm in the Denver area, but we're pretty close. Um, you brought up Boulder Startup Week, and a lot of people listening don't even live somewhere where there's startup weeks.
Mm,
But Boulder and the Denver one are really big. What has been your experience when you go there? Do you go just as a guest? Do you go to speak? Do you recruit? Boulders or Boulders, students from CU Boulder to work with you. I am curious because I know that this is becoming a bigger thing across certain cities, and I'd like to hear what your feedback
yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah. So we have explored speaking. We haven't done that yet. I like to go there because primarily, especially in your local area, if you have the opportunity to go to a startup week, even just a meetup, any sort of networking opportunity, but certainly a startup week or other conference has that much more attendance typically. Um, Having that ability to meet with people locally, it really feels like you're all part of the same team. There's that warmth, there's that sense of just camaraderie. You can go visit them right down the street or in the next town over. You can meet them for coffee easily. You're not halfway around the country or another country and don't have that ability to actually meet up in person. So I've found several people that I've been able to continue that relationship and be able to help them out when they've had a need, when they've moved on from a job and just need a networking opportunity, or for us to reach out and have them help us. So the startup weeks, the conferences, local conferences, are invaluable, and I really encourage everybody to get out there because even if you're not trying to sell something or buy something, you can still just enjoy the spirit, the camaraderie, the energy. It's exciting, and of course, you get to learn something because inevitably there's the tech is moving so fast, especially now. It seems like it's just taken on a warp level.
It is.
So
Yeah.
these environments is where you can really get exposed to some of these ideas and meet some leaders in that
Yeah, no,
arena.
that's good advice. I haven't been to the Boulder one, but I've been to the Denver Startup Week a few times, and I mean it's massive. I mean it just takes over
Yeah,
all of downtown, and it's for like
yeah,
it's a whole week, right? So I mean it's even if you miss a few days, and then they always have really good parties at the end of the week. So that's one thing I do like. They
yeah,
have like good like rooftop pool parties, but everyone's like in suits, and they're
yeah,
in dresses from
yeah.
business casual or formal kind of thing. But no, it's I think it's fantastic because, like you said, when things are traveling at light speed here, technology wise, a very smart thing to do for any executive is to get in at that kind of ground level of thought, right? Like the older we get, old dogs, new tricks kind of thing. Well, the solution is not to try to learn new tricks, just get puppies. You know what I mean? Like go because they're already they're in that mind space.
Yeah.
We've developed kind of a mindset that gives us a bigger picture and we're making sure the whole thing doesn't crash. Whereas, someone younger they don't have to think that way. They can think in their lane and go berserk on it and get really creative, but that's what you need. You have enough of those people around, and it can give you the ideas that you need to manage at that bigger level, right? For growth. So I love the startup idea. I'm glad that you go. I would love to hopefully get to see you to speak though. If you end up getting on the speaking side of it, you let
Great.
me know. I'll come up to Boulder because I'm not too far. I want to come see that.
I love it. Thanks.
So last thing is, what are well, I guess second to last thing since we talk about the future of BizTech, where do you guys want to be in the next 12 months? And you can answer that in any way you want. You want to be revenue or a certain amount of clients, or do you want to sell the company, or are you trying to pivot or bring
Yeah.
on new services? Like in 12 months from now, if we have this conversation again, what would have happened?
Yep. So we're in the process of, because of this whole AI agentic shift happening right now, and it's disrupting the entire industry, devs, QA, design, everybody, right? It's right in the heart and other industries. But because it hits so squarely in what we do, we are, shifting, we're pivoting, as far as how we approach our craft, to embrace that naturally. And so in a year from now, with the further evolution, deepening, broadening of the AI tech, agentic tech, I see us utilizing those tools to a very deep degree throughout our process. So right now, there's still even some clients we have that we're just manual. We've got people, we got bodies on the system doing their typing or tapping on the screen, and that's on its way out. That is just we've already seen it, and we get a lot more and more requests from clients coming in saying, "Hey, we just want to focus on the automation, or we'll do manual when it's needed, but focus on the automation." And all of that is being impacted by agentic AI. All of that. So in a year from now, having those tools, which are being developed and are quite capable even right now, but will be that much more in a year. Having those tools in place to enable us to do what we do essentially 10 times faster with
Yeah.
maybe even half as many people. That's where I expect us to be. So, twice as many clients with half as many people, or the same amount of people,
Yeah.
and, the relevant revenue increase. But I see us embracing these tools, integrating these tools, and relying on these tools to make everything better, faster, cheaper, really, because that's
Yeah.
that's that's how the entire industry is moving.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've always said that it's going to be the people who figure out how to harness AI
Yep.
that are going to stay in business. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's entire industries that will be affected by it, but within those industries being affected, if you're scared of AI, fine, bail out. Make it easier for the guys who are sticking in it, right? And for those who stick in it, I mean, you better throw a saddle around that horse because it's gonna buck you off real fast if you don't, right?
You have to be willing to pivot and stay current if you're going to stay in the game. It's just that
Yeah.
that's the way it is. And we've seen it in other uh, tech that people weren't able to shift into, and we're seeing it now. So
Well, on that note, it kind of sounds like its own advice, but I'll ask anyway here.
sure.
What I guess you can answer either way you want. Either A, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given by maybe a mentor or a family member or whatever when it comes to business in this sense? Or what's the best piece of advice that you can impart on the audience from your own experiences?
So one of the probably the biggest thing, and we haven't touched on this yet, is the use of international resources. The horror story days of the early 2000s are over. There is enough capable technology in place, and it's been in place for years and years. We saw it over COVID, that enable a remote and geographically dispersed landscape. There is no reason why you should not be taking advantage of that. So our team is mostly overseas. So we are a fully remote company, and our team is overseas, and we've had to learn all the ups and downs of how to manage those teams properly. So I would say for any company, whether you're a dev shop, QA shop, or just producing software, seriously consider how to leverage that those resources, because that will save you time and money, and you will need to configure your team and embrace different ways of doing things in order to do it well. So make sure you approach it well. And so I would say broaden your perspective as far as your resources.
Great advice. I love it. How can people find you personally if they heard something on the podcast that they really want to reach out to you about? And then where do they
Absolutely.
find OnPath?
Absolutely. So our website, www.onpathTesting.com. And so please visit us there. We actually just did a whole rebranding with the Fibonacci spiral. It's very nice. So we're
Good.
very proud of it. And then just please reach out to me. My email is Brian, Brian, at onpathtesting.com.
Perfect. And listen, for everybody listening right now, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Future of BizTech. If you like it, comment, share more, share more. Did I say share? I said share. Yeah, share more. And listen, that we do that because that's how tech nerds like us find cool podcasts like this one. Brian, thank you so much for being on, and I look forward to probably meeting you sometime here. So close that I can't imagine we can't grab a beer at some point. I want to see you, Boulder. I'll take any excuse to get back near campus, but we'll
Great.
talk soon.
Thanks so much, JC.
Bye bye.